Sometimes when I feel like I have problems or, I'm upset about something, first I think about myself. Then I think about my friends, all my friends who are around me, and knowing that they've been through hardships as well, or whatever, problems of any sort. And then I scale back and I think about people in third world countries who are far less fortunate, or living far less fortunate than they should be. And maybe, they feel fortunate with, what they've got. And then I scale back further and I think of the earth. And I think about how, I'm just one being out of billions. And then I scale back even further. And then I think about the galaxy. And I think about how my existence is a grain of salt, a second, an instance. And maybe my problems aren't really problems.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Greetings, fellow Bindlists. Welcome back to another episode of Bindlism, a philosophy to a self-sufficient lifestyle. This episode, Kyle and I had the pleasure of interviewing Celine Rahman, the creator of Cup of Rahman. Not to be confused with ramen noodle soup, Cup of Rahman is a fashion accessory and clothing brand that Celine started to channel her inner 90s childhood while also spreading a positive message for equality and change in our society. This episode has great insight into the mindset of an entrepreneur absolutely killing it, and we are so excited to share her story with you. We hope you enjoy episode 27 with Celine Rahman.
So without further ado, we have Celine. What's your last name, by the way?
Ramen, like the noodles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right, because her brand
the
is
best
Cup of
kind
Rahman,
of noodles.
so...
It's spelled R-A-H, right?
Yeah, M-A-N.
From what
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I get literally everything. Some people call me Raymond. Everyone spells it differently. It's not a thing. It's
Cool.
fine.
So you're creative of Syracuse, New York. Mm-hmm. Born and raised Syracuse?
Born and raised.
Okay.
Nice.
So you want to give us a little brief intro of who you are, what you do?
Yeah. I am just another starving artist out here thriving, doing what I love. I went to school for communications and
Where'd you go to
college,
school?
Syracuse
Oh, nice.
University.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was really life-changing. I loved studying communications, and that led me to...
You went for 4 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I went to OCC, and then I transferred to Syracuse. So I have a degree in humanities and social sciences from OCC, and then I did, I think, three years at SU. So, but it was very awesome.
3 years of the communications.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I'm sorry. It's kind of a funny story. 1 year, or maybe it was 2 semesters of English and textual studies, and then I transferred to communications and rhetorical studies. So I was bouncing around a little bit, but it was all kind of in the same realm. But I took a lot of really great classes at Syracuse, so very thankful. I had a lot of great teachers and, learned a lot about myself and the people around me.
What was the biggest thing you learned?
The biggest thing I learned, was that I don't need to do anything I don't want to. Meaning that I don't need to go out to the bars if my friends want to go out to the bars. I don't.
And that's huge social pressure.
Yeah,
especially in college.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my junior year, I certainly was over it. I think, a combination of my sister. She was 2 years ahead of me, and I would hang out with her when I was in high school. So I was going to college parties in high school. And by the time I was a junior, I was just like burnt out of the whole
It's the same
social
same
life.
rhythm, you know.
Yeah.
I had the
Weekend
same.
after weekend, it's like
The only problem I had in college was that I didn't say no until
lot of
like
people
college
don't.
ended, and I was like, I could have said no a lot.
Yeah. It's weird to look back and to be like, why did I waste so much time? I think there was a point where I was just like, my weekends were, I would go so hard Friday night, wake up Saturday in the afternoon, spend all day recovering so that I can go out the next night, and then just spend all day Sunday recovering.
and doing homework, catching up on
Yeah, exactly. And
Preparing
it's-
for the week
Yeah.
again.
doing school, what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I remember just being like, why is every weekend like, why am I in pain every weekend? Was the bigger question. So I was like, this has to stop.
That is an interesting way of thinking about it. Like, you probably spend more time feeling miserable from the post drinking than you actually do spending like having fun drinking and partying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what, you figured that out your junior year, that
Yeah, I was just so
you kind of
done.
bring that back in?
Yeah. And I was like, I think in general I was a bit of a people pleaser, and just besides the fact that I love being social and hanging out with my friends, but it just got like, some of my friends were like, they're so, peer pressure. And it was just like, I'm sitting here in pain, and like, you can't accept that because you want to feel good or not feel bad about like consistently going out when I don't want to do that. Like, why can't you just respect how I feel?
And were they open-minded? Did you have that conversation with them?
No. It was kind of felt like a dead end, that it wasn't gonna, it's like sometimes you can say something and there's only so many times that someone is gonna listen. But I kind of just,
Well, you did speak up though.
oh yeah, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna go out. And they're like, come on, just come out. I'm like, no, I'm
It's like-
staying.
it's
And
so-
I'm like,
It's literally like so embedded in the college culture that like any naysayers is like totally just like weed them out. Like
Yeah.
either you're in or you're out. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's crazy.
yeah, it really is. Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back before college, and we can kind of work into what your project is and everything, because I'm really curious about it. So tell us a little bit about what like life growing up and kind of where this creative mindset is kind of stemming from.
I think I was born a creative. I just was.
Out the womb.
Yeah,
drawing,
straight
doing
up.
stuff.
Yeah, my mom. I think I get a lot of creativity from my mom, and she's very into fashion and the decades, and she's very keen on. She's got a very interesting style, and I remember my youngest art moments where my mom bought me a tray of oil pastels, and it was like, these were like gold, like, and my mom was like, I want you to make me things with these. And I loved them. I loved the feeling of pastels, but also fashion played a huge part in my creativity. I was I needed to be dressed the way that I needed to be dressed.
Authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity to it.
Yeah.
And was this at like a very young age you identified that?
I remember a picture day. It had to be like first or second grade, maybe even, first or second grade. And I didn't realize it was picture day. And my mom, she's got 2 other kids. Everything's happening at once. Like, I don't blame her. We're like, okay, it's picture day. Like, gotta find something to wear. And I was distraught that I didn't have a white T-shirt to go under my corduroy jumper. And I was just so angry. I was like, why didn't we plan this out? Like, this was very early on in life. So, and, my mom has a ton of stories about me throwing fits about like not having 2 pairs of shoes for 2 different occasions when we, went to Marshall's, and like she always talks about that. And I remember specific moments where I was like, I I need these like rainbow platform shoes because like I'm a Spice Girl. Like, what do you want from me? I love it. I need to fulfill my creative dreams by dressing the way that I want to dress.
So I mean, you're so young at that time. Maybe not as much like social influence. Mm-hmm. Where were you drawing in your inspiration with your ideas?
Well, my parents, they didn't want us watching MTV, but we watched MTV when we could. Like, we would sneak around. And nice. I was very intrigued just by music in general, but music videos. I would watch TRL and see all these different kinds of artists, and I'd be like, I want to look like that, or I like the way that looks. And it's kind of funny that at the end of the day, it all came from the screen. Well, not all of it, but a lot of my 90s influence came from the women of the 90s, most especially the Spice Girls. They were my idols. They still are. They always will be. But yeah, I think I drew a lot of influence from that. And Limited 2, that was like my favorite store of all time.
Nice.
Anything there, I was trendy, I'd say. Not like to the point where it's like gaudy trendy, but I was like, I think I knew what was cool to me.
Yeah.
And that's all that mattered. So
how did you know?
It's a feeling.
Like you're just drawn to
it's one of those
aesthetic.
things you just know.
It's a vibe, yeah.
So were you like easily way better dressed than everyone else you hung out with?
Not better.
Or sorry, just like
she was
I don't
herself.
know, more authentic, like less. I don't know. You know how parents dress their kids when they're little.
Yeah.
You probably weren't looking like that.
Yeah. No, I'd say I was definitely different. I mean, there were times when I remembered, my friends and I, we would plan our outfits. We would wear dresses to school. We would wear heels to school, which is so funny. Like, why? Why am I wearing heels in high school? But
why do you ever wear heels?
Literally, I've stopped mostly. So a small heel here and there, but nothing too much. It's exhausting personally. But yeah, I think that I've kind of always had I've always had my personal sense of what I wanted to wear, and it didn't matter to me if everyone else didn't like it. It was never about that. And for the record, I did win Best Dressed in high school, so I would say
it pays off.
Yeah, but no, seriously, like it's just still everything that I wear is just a mood. It's what I'm feeling entirely.
So would you say fashion is like your top influence in the artwork and creative stuff that you do, or is it just one facet?
I'd say it's just one facet for sure. I'm constantly inspired by everything and anything. Yeah, from just media to physical art.
It's nice to hear your backstory of how media had this positive influence. You hear so much in the media about how like media is like destroying our youth, how there's like so much of it. But like in your case, you were able to make something that parents might have seen as like controversial, MTV, and turn it into this thing that actually drove you into becoming the woman that you are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, big
cool.
Shout out to MTV for
R.I.P.
keeping, TRL, R.I.P. I still love MTV. I always will. They're very cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to kind of get talking about your project a little bit and get to know a little bit more. So it's called Cup of Rahman.
Yes.
Yeah. So when did you start the brand? The brand, and kind of what's the inspiration behind that?
Actually, in college, I started Cup of Ramen as a blog because I loved music. I still do, but I used to write about it, and that's kind of where it started off. And so I would do these blog posts, and then it kind of turned into like I'd talk about whatever I wanted, and then it was a little music, but it was primarily music. But I knew that when I created it, I knew that it wasn't it was like a forever thing. Like, I knew that it was going to change and, go through different things. But I always knew that Cup of Ramen was going to be my brand, like my thing. And I was quite cautious about that too, because I remember I didn't want to post anything that was like, or I didn't want like my name fully associated with it, like my full name.
Right.
I didn't want to like make my usernames all like Cup of Ramen, Cup of Ramen. That's why I have That Good Ramen and Cup of Ramen, just to separate from the brand. But yeah, so essentially it started off as a music blog. And when I moved to New York after college, I was like, should I start an Instagram for it? Because I'm like, my blog is kind of music, but, Instagram is this new thing and like, I love it. So why not? So I started this Instagram and I started posting a lot of like 90s quotes and 90s women, and just, it was kind of like a mood board,
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to gain this following, and I was like, oh, like maybe, okay, like different doors are opening. And, at the time I was in New York, and by the time it was kind of thriving, I was kind of ready to move home. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I moved home, because I surely knew that the opportunities in Syracuse weren't going to be the same as in New York.
Yeah.
So but like in my heart, I was just like, this is not for you. You got to go. So
How long were you in New York?
Like a little over 3 years, 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Somewhere around there.
So how long have you been back here?
I think 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Let's see. When did I get back? I think I got back October 2016. Yeah. So somewhere around 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you moved back, what was that transition like? And did that help your brand, or, kind of put you in the right direction, I guess?
Definitely. And at the time, Cup of Ramen was still kind of just this muse where like the blog aspect had kind of like died out, and it was like solely Instagram. And when I moved back home, I decided to turn it into an LLC, a business, so that, I can make things and,
Sell
just
it.
give. Yeah.
So did you know like what you were going to make or sell at that point?
Yeah. Because when I was in New York, I had picked up illustration, and a couple of my illustrations had gone viral, and I'm like, oh, like maybe I'm not so bad at this, and like this could be a bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
So originally I wanted to make just graphic tees, but then I kind of grew into this whole world of just resin making, and it was so intriguing that I was like, this has to be a part of what I'm doing, and it has been pretty much the sole part of it. But and I've got a couple T-shirts, but it's just so much fun, and it's so cool. You can do so many different things with resin, and I just love it so much. So I do have I'd say like 80% of my products are resin, but actually right now I'm focusing more on getting apparel out because I need it for me personally.
Yeah.
Like I need more. Like,
I think, so I was looking through the website. Did you look at the website at all?
No,
So I was looking through the website, and I like saw that it was mostly, more of the accessories and jewelry, but when I got to the bottom and I saw what you had up, I'm sure you've probably changed out at some point, but I was like, okay, like these are really cool shirts too. So like it's a nice mix, and so I'm visualizing a fashion, like the clothing side of the fashion. Adding that would be a really nice touch.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm doing a bit more wholesale too, so I can kind of give the artist a break a little bit and kind of just more mood on like what I would sell and what
like
I
the
would
structure of it, the day-to-day kind of like get foundation. going.
Yeah, because I'm making resins all the time. I'm getting ready for a pop-up on June 1st, which is not this weekend, but next weekend. So I've been like just making resins every day.
Where's that going to be?
It'll be at my place in DeWitt.
Oh, okay,
So
cool.
the theme is lemonade stand, so it'll be
Oh, nice.
lemonade stand style pop-up. There will be lemonade in case anyone's thirsty.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll have to pop on
Pop
through.
out.
Yeah.
Pop on, pop in.
Pop in. Drop by.
We're coming.
So
We
have you like made a stand and everything for this?
I bought one of those tents, a vendor tent,
Yeah.
and it's pink. So
Nice.
that's happening. But I also am planning on making signs. So like
Nice.
down the street and around the corner and whatnot. So, but I'm debating whether or not I should put like lemonade stand and an arrow, and then it's just not. It's like a lemonade stand, but it's not.
There's a little bit of lemonade.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Have you like done any marketing for this event?
Yeah. I just started pushing out a little bit ago, and got a pretty decent response so far. So I'm hoping, it'll be decent.
Yeah. So, are you doing this full time, or are you doing another job as well?
This is part-time, but also
Part-time
full-time.
but full-time.
Yeah. I usually work in film, so I've been doing that on and off, and usually films will last like about a month. But at this point in particular, I'm not working on a film, so I'm kind of full-time in Cup of Rahman, but also doing like little side gigs here and there, photography, graphics.
So no like
Whatever.
9-to-5 job,
Oh, no.
just creativity all around.
So when you say
Nice.
film, are you like acting in these films? Or are you like a part of the production of the film?
I'm a part of the production.
Okay.
I work in costume.
Nice. Oh,
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Are these any like notable films? Are they mostly like indie? What's the?
Yeah, they're indie. Well, the last ones that I've worked have been indie features. I was working on Big Time Adolescence, which was a film with Pete Davidson, and that went to Sundance recently, which was
Oh, wow.
super cool.
It's huge.
Yeah, and then I did Sid is Dead with Joey Bragg, and he was in a Disney show. I'm not sure which one. And then I worked on Looks That Kill, taking back. That was with Brandon. Oh my gosh, I can't remember his last name right now. Brandon, he was in 13 Reasons Why on
Okay.
Netflix. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
watched that.
What character is he in that?
He played the jock. He was like the one
Oh, okay.
jock.
The one.
Yeah, you know who
Yes,
I'm talking about.
yes.
Yeah, the one. Yeah. But yeah, it's all been nice. Yeah.
So how did you get started in that film stuff?
So I actually, when I was in New York, I went to acting school, and when I came back here, I was trying to just get more gigs and as extras and stuff like that. So I found out about this film that was happening called Banana Split with Dylan Sprouse. You know, the Sprouse.
Yeah.
And so I came on as an extra, and I saw that the costume department needed a lot of help. So
That's where you
just
came in.
like that, I offered my services, and they were like, "Come join us." So
That's
I did.
awesome.
Yeah.
So instead of being an extra, you were just like, I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out as like, a full-time job, because this way it was like I can do these films, and then I can fund my business, and then I can do the film. So it's kind of like I'm doing both things that I love, and I'm not sitting behind a desk 24/7,
As an artist, it's so expansive. Like, you have to really pull in all these different resources that at first glance might not look like it connects, But if you're running like a personal brand like you are, you're able to connect all these different pieces together.
Yeah, it was really nice too because, you know, I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, you know, if I have this business, you know, I have stuff to give away to people who I end up becoming friends with on the film. I gave away a couple T-shirts to some of the actors, and they were very awesome. And they, you know, my thing is that, like, I am not going to, you know, be like, hey, like, post this,
Right.
you know? So, I give my stuff and I'm like, you know, feel free, but it is no requirement. Like, you know, I've got this thing going on, whatever. And a lot of them were super sweet, and it was really awesome. Griffin, who was in Big Time Adolescence, he posted a photo with my T-shirt a couple times, which I was just so happy to see, and it looked great on him. So that's even
awesome.
better. Yeah,
I like those moments. We've had a couple moments like that where we like collaborated with someone and they ended up like wearing our stuff in their like productions. You're like,
That's
we didn't
awesome.
even ask you to do that. That's really awesome. And I like that the mindset of not like almost forcing it onto people.
Yeah,
I think you build more like raving fans in that sense.
yeah.
It seems like you have the mindset of like give without any expectation of like return, and having that attitude and just being humble as a human being and realizing that we're all kind of in this together, collaborating, creating, like it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like if you know, you know.
Right.
You
yeah.
know?
And you can tell when you meet people and they're asking about your brand or whatever, you can tell whether they just see this as, these are just products, or they see the brand for everything that it is, including you, like actually getting to know who's behind it.
Oh, that's
Most
another
definitely.
thing that I was interested in. Like when you were first starting Cup of Rahman, did you have any like backlash or like people that were like narrow-minded when you were trying to express yourself with the idea?
Like as in the blog or like the business?
Just all of it in general.
Any parts of it.
Not that I can think of. And I'm pretty lucky to say that because I have, a really good supportive team of people around me, from my friends to my family, and everyone has been like, just pushing for me. So I truly
awesome.
appreciate it all. But there are definitely times where I know that I'm like in my creative gutter and I'm like, is this good? Is this even cool? Like, and then I'll just reach out to my friends and say, what do you guys think about this? Like, would you rock it? So it's nice to have that, because personally I know what I would rock. And I think that's the heart of Cup of Ramen. But also it's important to know like what people will actually want to buy.
And that's the hard part too, is like being authentic with yourself, and then also, bringing value to other people too.
Yeah, there actually was this one illustration that I did. It was like about Mercury in retrograde. And so many people are like, we want this as a t-shirt. And I'm like, I'm sitting here cringing because I want to make it a t-shirt, but I also would never rock it as a t-shirt. So I'm still trying to figure out, what would be the best way to make this, to put this into a product. And it's not easy on top of like just everything else that's happening in a business. But
something I always think about too, and I've heard this through other entrepreneur minds, whatever, is you also hit this point where you have to almost like detach yourself from the brand, because you can't always make things you want to wear or you want, because at some point it's like it's more for the consumer side of it, and that's hard to do, especially when it's. Would you consider your brand like a lifestyle brand or just a fashion brand? How would you?
I'd definitely say
not that you have to label it.
Yeah, probably more lifestyle. The thing is that, I got so tripped up when I first started Cup of Ramen because, I made this t-shirt and I was just like, graphic tees right now are so like, it's like a dime a dozen, you know what I mean? So there's so much saturation in graphic tees, besides the fact that it's like, oh yeah, I could just like make an easy, trendy, like looking like graphic and like put it out there, But I was just like, I'm not gonna make clothes to just like feed a trend. Like if I'm going to make clothes, I want them to have a fundamental purpose in the way that, I want people to think consciously about what they're seeing. So like for the Stay Woke, Make Change, that was like a light graphic, obviously it can have many different meanings, but it's like, it's about a movement, whether it's, within yourself or something that you see within others. And I want to make my clothes conscious. There's half of me, which is like my 90s child brain, which is like, I have fun making like the keychains and the jewelry and all the glittery stuff. But when it comes to the clothes, I really want people to look twice, like see it and be like, oh,
and that's
okay.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like maybe strike a nerve within that person to say, oh, like, I don't know. I'm working on a couple different things, but.
So for you, it's the importance of spreading a message.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say your message is at this point?
I think solely it's about love, whether that's self-love or just, spreading love or just being good to one another. That's the core of it.
And you would say love is equated to being good to one another?
Yeah, because I don't think you can't, be good to someone else if you don't know how to be good to yourself a lot of the time. So I think it's just kind of like a constant reflection of, just understanding yourself.
Because if like you're having hurt, then you're going to end up spreading that onto others.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what you're talking about, self-love, figure that out first and then love others kind of thing.
In theory, yeah. But, some people just, I think self-love is a big topic right now. And certainly I had a very awakening experience with understanding it more for myself. And, if I can help anyone else understand the way that I understand it, that's great. But of course, I can't, write the whole book on a T-shirt. I can only, give pieces.
That's what this podcast is.
Yeah, no,
let's talk about
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So you said you had an awakening. Mm-hmm. That's deep. That's deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was kind of like walking on water. But no, well, here's the thing. My mother, she's a very, very loving person, and she raised me, my brother, my sister with so much love that, growing up and, of course, getting into dating, it really was hard for me to understand why people were just so harsh and like why, I had a couple rude awakenings. I'm not going to go into details, but it came to the point for me where basically when I was at Syracuse, the whole time I'm like, gonna find a boyfriend in college. It'll be so great, whatever. No, that never happened.
Super idealistic.
Yeah, very, very idealistic. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to meet a guy here in Syracuse. I got to get out. Like that was like my thought process, which, it is a very small melting pot here. But anywho, I went to New York and I realized I was in the same pool there that I was here. Wow. And I'm like, this is exhausting. This is a waste of my time. I've spent so many years just trying to find someone who, you know, who's just on my level, who just can just like, you know, why
Like your
not
vibe?
just, yeah, but also just like who can just be courteous. Like, you don't have to like completely blow me off. Like, I'm not offended if you're not feeling it. Like, I'm not gonna, but you know, I get it too, because it's part of the culture that we're in, the time that we're in, where, you know, we are working with all these digital screens, all these digital faces, where we cannot, you know, we don't experience emotion in the way that, you know, we did just 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Different world.
people aren't often thinking about, you know, the emotional barriers that are being held up and how we're so comfortable with just dismissing people and just, you know, whatever. There's this lack of emotional awareness that I think our culture.
Empathy.
Yeah, exactly. But anywho, I had decided when I was in New York and after I was just done that I was like, you know what? I am going to dedicate this time to me. I'm going to put everything, I'm not going to think about, you know, my love possibilities anymore. I am just going to focus on my craft and focus on bettering myself. And during this time, you know, I'm reading like a handful of like awakening books, and I'm doing yoga, and I'm doing meditation. I'm in acting class, which is essentially like peeling these emotional barriers away to, you know, reveal this truth. Which is, it was like this like evolutionary practice that I was going through every day. And I realized like, you know, it was going so great. I'm like, wow, I'm really enjoying my life right now. Like, this is what it feels like to be high on life. And every day I just looked forward to waking up to, you know, experience the next day. And I remember being on the subway and I was reading my book, and this guy, he came up to me and he was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you are glowing and I need to know what it is.
What's the secret?
Yeah, like he's like, what is it? Like, and I was like so taken aback because I'm like, you know, I'm in my own world now. I've pretty much, in New York, I kind of end up shutting like everything out because everything is so hectic around me that I'm just like, I want to be in my own little world a lot of the time. And basically I had realized that I was like, this is what self-love is. Like, I take myself out on dates. I take myself out to dinner. I go to the movies and it's fine. Like, I feel good by myself. Like, you know, I'm doing these things that are feeding my soul. And, you know, I'm learning more about myself, which honestly, I think anyone who can take time to just quiet their mind and learn a little bit more about themselves is like, that's you entering the truth of who you really are.
The consciousness that you're talking about.
So that was happening. And that's when it just became easier for me to kind of realize, like, you know, well, this isn't, you know, this type of behavior doesn't serve me, or this type of environment doesn't serve me in the way that it doesn't make me feel good. And I know that I don't have to do it. So why am I forcing myself to do it for the pleasure of others? And
it almost gives you direction in a sense.
Yeah, it definitely did. Direction back to Syracuse.
It is home.
Yes. Okay, so that's interesting. So you said, like, you know, you left here thinking you were going to get away from this one thing, and then you go to New York and it's almost like this times 1,000.
Yeah.
So what's coming back home like with, you know, this mindset change and this self-discovery?
It's so peaceful. It's so peaceful here. You know, you don't have to walk around the corner and like smell like urine or just, you know, hot garbage, you know. It's a very wonderful nature environment, which was what I feel like I was lacking so much, just like being outdoors and like having like access to garden, you know.
Having like open space
Yeah.
that's not concrete and building.
Yeah. And I literally remember coming home and I'm like, the air smells like watermelons here. It smells like watermelons here. Like, how could I have left this place? But yeah, it definitely took me going away to appreciate what I had here. And it's just the simpler life. And it's not to say that I don't love New York, because I'll always love New York. I just don't need it every every day.
Yeah. It's probably more of a go travel for the
Vacation.
weekend or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, from going to Syracuse to New York City, that was like a journey in itself. How much of that journey did you have the awakening in New York as opposed to Syracuse?
It was primarily in New York, but towards the end of my journey there, I was coming back home on the weekends like so
Okay.
often that I was like,
Might as well.
yeah, I was like, it just doesn't make sense, because I'm so, like, I can feel like my soul and my spirit is just so relieved to like be in this calm environment that I know that I can't, like, this is not sustainable for me to be in New York. And I remember I was working with this artist, Rex. Actually, he's a very cool illustrator. And he was telling me about one of his friends who, she was an artist, she was a singer, and she was like, yeah, she went upstate. She had to like write her album. She didn't talk to anyone. She just completely like built a cave and like did her art. And I'm like, whoa, that like struck a nerve with me, because after he had told me that, I was like, I think I'm going to move home, like just within the next 5 minutes. And that week, by the end of the week, I was like, I'm moving home. And there wasn't any type of
Like conflict or
yeah,
anything?
no, it was like, yeah, this, and I could feel it. Like, it was
insane.
so easy for me to want to do it. And
during that time, were you searching for answers for something new, different?
well, I didn't really have a big plan for when I came home, because mostly I was like, I need my sanity back. So I was going to come home, figure things out. I'm super thankful that my parents, of course, they opened their home, up to me, which was so wonderful. I'm very thankful that I had a place to go home to and just, think and just, take care of myself for a second before I even dove back into my career. And I was doing a lot of job search, and I'm like, what could I do here, And it was like a mystery, but I kind of was just like, I need to trust what's happening and, just keep doing what I love as I can. So, small pieces kind of came together, and, I found out about, they're doing films in Syracuse. Oh, that's so great. Like, maybe I can be an extra. So then that was when I went down, and at the time they were filming at Astor's, and I went there, and it was really great. It was like I walked right into what I was looking for. So
awesome.
Damn. Do you believe in law of attraction?
I do. In fact, I practice the law of attraction because I feel like it's an essential part of, living your truth.
How so?
Well, just in the way that, if you want something, you can go for it. And that pure belief without, negative mindset barriers is alone, like, I think what life is about. It's about going for what you believe in and what you want, what you feel that you're destined or just want to pursue. And there are no, like, wrong paths, I don't really believe that, because I think that everything that we go through is a lesson, and it's whether or not we can look back and learn from it and use that knowledge to get to where we need to.
Always like shifting perspective and trying to see the light in all the darkness.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy. I go through it. I go through a lot of negative chatter sometimes, but then I'm like, okay.
Within your head?
Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I know I'm not meditating enough. So then, that happens.
So as a practitioner of law of attraction, how would you say, if you're giving advice to someone, how would you practice law of attraction?
First, you have to, I think, just shut out that negative chatter. You have to change your mindset and start thinking on the positive side rather than the negative side, because negative thoughts, or thoughts in general, it's like your mind is the piggy bank. So if 10 cents is a positive thought, 25 cents is a negative thought. And it is always easier to think negatively, at least that in my experience and from what I've
It's
heard
like the
from other
lowest hanging
people.
fruit almost.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And the more negative thoughts you put in, it's like the quicker, the positive thoughts can get clouded. And a lot of the time it's more difficult to remove or just change your perception of thinking. So it's a challenge, but that's self-love, and that's,
Yeah, I was going to say that
working.
kind of comes back to what you were talking about before about like learning how to love yourself and understand yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think that like I kind of went through I wouldn't say similar, but I had an awakening as well, and a lot of it was just intake of information and learning about these things like law of attraction, manifestation, all these things, and just learning like all it takes is doing it enough, and like it's almost like a light switch goes off, and your whole mindset on just life changes, and you like exude that. Like people can see it. It's pretty obvious when you're way more confident about things you're doing and more what's the word, like the audacity to do crazy like entrepreneurial things, and in the case of what we're all doing, like it changes. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's another good thing to talk about is like you have so many reasons not to be an entrepreneur, so many risks that are involved in being an entrepreneur. At the end of the day, you question yourself, like, why am I doing this? It would be so much easier to go and work for a company that's already established. So it's like, what is that thing driving you forward through all of the hardships that you're enduring through the journey? And that's my question to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was rhetorical or not. Sorry, can you say the last part again?
What is the thing that's driving you forward through all of the hardships when it would be much easier? I don't want to speak for you. For me, it would be much easier for me to go and just, work at a company that's already established for the rest of my life.
Well, I kind of felt like I had already done that. I went to New York and I did all these amazing things, and I experienced a lot of what I wanted to do. I was a photographer at New York Fashion Week. I got to see some of the most amazing designers that I've ever known. I went to the VMAs. I got to, watch, my favorite artists get interviewed right before my eyes. I created things. I had my own show, and I felt fulfilled in that manner. But I think it was more so just like I know what's feeding my soul, and I know a fraction of what my purpose is, and that is to help others. And I think when you can kind of live to serve, that's top. So
That gives you purpose.
yeah.
Serving others.
Yeah. In most ways. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
This might be a caveat, but I'm having this breakthrough as we're talking here, and we're talking a lot about like finding peace within us, and you're going to be going through all of these challenges, but still like being at peace with yourself. But at the same time, there's a sense of like exuding that out to other people as well. And it's like, how can you bring value to yourself and value yourself and be at peace with yourself while you're going into the world and trying to interact with many people and also trying to please them and bring happiness or value, whatever it may be, love. I don't know, that's like a question on my mind is like...
That is interesting, because there's so many people that aren't necessarily going to even understand. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that could listen to this conversation right now and be like, holy crap, this is crunchy granola. Like, you guys are all hippies. Like, what the hell are you smoking? Kind of thing.
Crunchy granola.
So that's what people refer to in Vermont as like very like hippie, progressive.
That's
crunchy
so
granola.
Funny. I've heard granola bitch, but I haven't heard
because I came
granola.
home and the people at my office were like, you giving off a very crunchy granola vibe. And I was like, damn, I didn't think I was going to hear that back here, but here it is.
Honestly, it's quite fascinating because I think it really comes down to just personal awareness. And it's not easy because I know that, like, you know, if I'm, like, walking through the streets of New York in general during rush hour, that will put me off. Is that an environment I want to be in? Absolutely not. Do I know what it entails? Yes. And do I know, you know, how my emotions react and how I can, you know, better view the situation in, you know, my... you know, just like elevated perception where it's like, yes, this is happening, but actually the only way for you to feel comfortable is for you to feel comfortable. No one else can make you feel comfortable but you. So it's a lot of mind games. I feel like, you know, it's like, can you talk yourself into, you know, relaxing in an environment that isn't relaxing and that is temporary. Yeah. So that's another thing too, is that everything is temporary. So, and I think it
takes work. You have to constantly be like self-talk all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I feel like, coming back to that like light switch going off when it's like that realization moment allows you to get through those fleeting moments that before seemed like eternity. When you're in traffic, you're like, oh my God, I fucking hate this. Yeah. When in reality, it's like, do I even need to spend the energy to be mad about this? Like, I can't physically alter the situation to not be traffic or whatever. Like, this is where I'm at. So finding peace in that moment in any way possible, like, for me, it's like seeing the nature around the chaos. It's like, oh, there's a bird. That's awesome. Yeah. Look at that bird. Yeah. You know, like, or I also have a short attention span, so like a squirrel could get me like enjoying the moment. But
yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
What kind of like space in your mind? Like, what kind of things do you think about in those stressful moments that kind of help you stay positive?
First and foremost, I just breathe. I just like take a breath and just relax. And I think that's where like the consciousness comes from, is just knowing that like it's all temporary. All you have is your breath to rely on your existence. So, you know, use it as you can. But also it's funny because I feel like I've been talking about this a lot in the past couple of weeks. Sometimes when I feel like I have like problems or, you know, I'm upset about something, first I think about myself. Then I think about my friends, all my friends who are around me, and knowing that they've been through hardships as well, or whatever, problems of any sort. And then I scale back and I think about people in third world countries who are far less fortunate, or living far less fortunate than they should be. And maybe, you know, they feel fortunate with, you know, what they've got. And then I scale back further and I think of the earth. And I think about how, you know, I'm just one being out of billions. And then I scale back even further. And then I think about the galaxy and I think about how my existence is a grain of salt, a second, an instance, and maybe my problems aren't really problems. And there are far greater things that are happening beyond our existence.
There's actually a famous philosophical teaching of that. It's called absurdity, and it's about shifting your perspective to seeing you as the grain of salt that you are in terms of the universe, and to just see how using meaningless, and that might sound nihilistic, like lacking meaning, what's my purpose, this whole world is pointless, my life is pointless. That could be a very terrible thing, but in times of problems, you can use that to your advantage to be like, okay, chill, we're good.
I like we had a conversation last night. Our friend is she's going to be like a doctor in psychology, and we were talking about how everything in life is arbitrary. It's all given value from human, and before human, none of this was even a thing. Like, no other animals set values onto, like, oh, I had a client I was working with today was being a piece of shit. Like, I'm gonna stress out about this for like 4 hours or whatever. Like, shit like that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? You're gonna wake up the next day and something else is gonna happen. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I feel like more people than not don't have the ability of being able to separate themselves from the moments that, their ego. Like, the ego stays in front of them and causes so much more problems than that initial problem even was. You know, like, spending that energy or, like, having that potentially negatively affect the people around them because they're letting it be a problem. Like, it's insane to me. I wish there was more time spent on this way of thinking, just across the board. Like, but they don't teach us in school. They don't, it's difficult.
Yeah. What are your thoughts after going through college? Your thoughts on college?
You know, I remember being in high school and just being like I feel like I had Daria syndrome, where I was just like there, but I was like, I did not need to be there for the bullshit. And then I felt like, college was going to be my freedom. Like, I had plans to go to New York for college, and then those plans fell through, and I ended up staying at OCC. And I think the experience of going to a college that I initially didn't want to go to, but I knew was going to help me, financially and whatnot, it was a humbling experience because it was like, okay, I'm here for 2 years. Either I can make the most of it, or I can just be annoyed that I'm here the whole time. So I kind of, I went with it. I'm like, it's not as bad. And it was great. I had a wonderful professor who, I took my first communications class there, and that was the beginning of my intrigue in communications. So if it wasn't for that class, then I wouldn't have gone to communications at Syracuse. And I think the thing is that if you know what you want to study, then I think college is wonderful. And I think college is good in general. There are a lot of things that come with it that aren't ideal. But, life happens in many different ways. And I think that if you are passionate and if you know what you want to study, that's great. And you may even end up studying something that you like and then realize that you don't like it, which could be just another awakening. So,
taking the good or taking the bad and transforming it into the good. It seems like a lot of this boils down to what your values are and what you find to be of importance, and then making decisions based off of those values. What would you say some of the things that you value in your life at this moment in time?
Self-love. Also just, I had a conversation with Hannah obviously you guys know Hannah. She's the
Shout out to Hannah Naroski.
Shout out to Hannah. She's the creator of the Deck of Character, and she follows me on Instagram, and we just became friends last year, and but Hannah is like. She's a guru, you know what I mean? I think I'm sure she knows it, and like people, you just know is she's got this vibe where she's very wise. She's, we get it. Yeah. So Hannah basically said to me, she was like, I just feel like, you have things to say and you need to, there's like an activist within you. And I think, for a long time, I strayed away from politics and, a lot, just politics in general. I think a lot because my parents are kind of like, they love watching the news, which to me is just so trash. I cannot stand the news. I think a lot of the time it's just wasted. It's good to know what's going on in the world, but that's kind of why I feel like Twitter is a great source because you can see, what's important and whatnot. I mean, there's 100 different reasons.
And the truth, maybe.
Yeah, quite possibly the truth in what the people are saying,
Right.
which ends up being what's at the top of the charts. But it can be very poisonous, the news. So I've always been deterred from it. I never liked it. And I wanted to stay away from that, and I didn't want my brand to be a part of that. But, 2018 comes around, 2017, and, I have been through things personally, in my workplace in New York, in my college, that, these experiences that haven't been talked about from a women's perspective or things that have been talked about but that haven't been talked about enough or aren't, just magnified in a way that, there are issues within our society that need to be spoken upon. And, I'm a feminist and I, am here for the equality of all people, of course. I'm Black, I'm Lebanese, and I'm a woman. So I have a lot of different cultural and religious perception. And, so I've always kind of been a little like, well, I can hear what this person is saying and what that person is saying. And I know this because I've been there and I've been to this temple and that mosque and this church and whatnot. So in essence, what is most important to me and what I feel is that if I have to leave this earth at any point, I want my daughters and my sons to know that they should have the equality and they should be pushing for this type of equality within their future and their generations to come. And it's very important to me that women especially and Black women and men know that they have a place in this society and that they should not be, turned away because of, who they are or what they are labeled as. And that essence of equality and just, for people to be able to live in the ways that they want to amongst one another freely is so important to me. Because at the end of the day, we are all the human race. And it's so comfortable for us to walk around putting labels on one another. And, those labels cloud things. And then people start to, what's the word? Just, level.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, level one another. And we're all just human. Like, it's quite simple. And so I'm fighting for that. That's my biggest thing right now. And I'm going through a transitional period with myself and with my brand when it comes to just opening the eyes to seeing more equality amongst one another.
So how would you say you are planning on or are right now implementing this message through your brand?
So that definitely comes with the apparel. I actually just made a hoodie, which I'm very excited is coming out. Big fan of loungewear. So it says, be good to women. Pretty plain and simple, but a nice message.
Short and simple.
Yeah.
Drives the message
I like
home.
that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would like to ultimately have a good collection of conscious clothing that speaks to that, amongst other things.
I mean, right now, as you're speaking, you're spreading your message.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious because something that we've started doing is we actually, it's funny, you started blogging to start yours and kind of tapered off when we just started blogging.
Oh, really?
And within like the last couple months to kind of spread kind of like we talk a lot about mindset and philosophies on kind of, it's supposed to be helping entrepreneurs and creatives get through these tough times and kind of understand themselves. But other than the clothes, are you looking at any other like avenues that you could take your message?
I mean, just like through the gram, through my brand, just through my personal word, I suppose. Actually, a podcast has been on the topic, and I definitely have a lot of things going on, but I would love to be able to have a podcast just to talk about maybe the things that I've gone through, because I know, I've learned things myself, and I'm not saying that I can help everyone, but maybe someone who listens to what I have to say can maybe understand something more about themselves, which is just another goal.
So now would this be a personal podcast where it's just you talking on the mic? Would it be having guests?
I think it would be personal, but a couple of my friends are like, let's do a podcast. So I don't know. There's a bunch of different things up in the air. I just need to have the time and take the seed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I would say we both are advocates of having a podcast. We've seen...
Fuck podcasts.
Podcasting sucks. We're just saying that so less people podcast. So we No, but I mean, like, realistically, obviously the time aspect is huge and totally valid. But in terms of, like, pulling it off, not that difficult. I mean... We literally decided on doing a podcast in a car like one day, so it was totally spur of the moment. So I think it's definitely in your wheelhouse for sure.
Something.
For sure.
But you have the mindset, to wherever your brand and the message takes you, you'll know.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but I have to go to volleyball.
How
this
long
has been awesome.
How long have we been going, by the way? Do we?
An hour and 15.
Oh, okay. Well, we could probably just end it here then. I mean, is there anything
more?
No,
Is there anything else that you?
I feel like I've talked lifetimes to you guys in this small box.
Can I end it here and then you can leave and we'll be good. All right. I just want to know. All right. It's it's the end of May of 2019. Where do you see the brand going? Rest of the year, anything coming up, and then kind of long, in the next 5 years, any big plans?
More apparel for sure. Also just more physical ventures. I'd like to be able to travel to different states, and that was kind of the whole reason why I did this, so that I could be mobile and I can go from place to place. So hopefully if sales go good, can raise enough money to take some road trips, meet some cool people, spread the good word. And that's what I'd like to do. But there is also a store in the back of my brain. Just it's been sitting there for a while, so I'm kind of feeling that out. But I definitely want to venture out more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Plug any of your anywhere to find
Social
anything
media.
to do with you or Cup of Rahman. And any last words you want to say?
Find me at Cup of Rahman on pretty much anything. It's spelled CUP OFRAHMAN, not RAMEN, despite the way it sounds. I know it's very similar to the noodles, hence, the brand. But yes, and That Good Ramen, which is my personal Instagram. You can find my artist page on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Celine Rahman page. Find me on Twitter at That Good Ramen, also at Cup of Rahman. And thank you guys so much for
absolutely.
And also cupoframen.com, of course, nonetheless.
Yeah, we can't forget about that.
That's where the merch is. It's where the good things are. But no, seriously, thank you guys so much. This has been so awesome.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
Super grateful. Thanks for having me. This has been dope.
Yeah.
Very dope.
Thanks again for listening, everyone, and thank you so much to Celine for being on the show. Kyle and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation with you, and we're really glad that we now have a new friend in this Syracuse entrepreneur community. We're really excited to come out to your Lemonade Pop Shop on this upcoming Saturday. And we hope that anyone who's listening to this podcast before the weekend gets the chance to see it for themselves as well. I'm sure there'll be information about the event on Celine's Instagram accounts or Facebook, so definitely go check that out. I think it's going to be a really awesome event. If you haven't already, give this podcast a review. It really helps us know kind of what things that we're doing right, what things that we could do better, and get a little insight into the mind of some of the listeners. Also, we'd love it if you guys could tell your friends. Also, if you haven't already, or if you're new to the show, you can find us at BOHO, HOBO, lifestyle.com. That's our website. That's going to host everything from our blog, all of our podcast episodes, videos, and clothes. You can find us at boho_hobo_ on Instagram and Twitter, and then BOHO HOBO for Facebook and YouTube. We're really active on all social media. We're really trying to push a lot of content, whether it's podcasting, our blog, videos. We're doing it all, and we'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing. We actually just finished our first festival of the summer this past weekend at Gather Outdoors down in Monticello, New York. Pretty cool festival. It was mostly OG techno and house music. Not really the typical scene for Kyle and I, but we decided to give it a shot thanks to some insight from our friend Matt Byer, who is the founder of Indigo Intellect, which is another clothing brand out of Burlington, Vermont. He kind of let us know that this festival was happening last second, and we applied, got in, and we sent it. It was a really great success, I think, for a first year festival, and we're really happy that we were a part of it. Even though maybe we weren't the biggest fans of the music, I think we met some really cool people and got some insight into what we want to do as vendors at festivals moving forward. So kind of cool little insight into kind of what we're doing with our brand. But we're excited for the festivals coming up soon, and we'll be telling you a lot more about those festivals as they come about. We really appreciate all the supporters out there that have been continuing to listen to us week in, week out, and we look forward to the interviews to come. Not sure who we're interviewing next, but there should be an episode coming soon. So until then, we will see you next time on Bindlism, a philosophy to a self-sufficient lifestyle.